Okay, I'm going to go through some Photoshop photo merging skills, some basic tools that you guys are going to need to know in order to do this project. This will be another demonstration that you follow along with me, so you'll be doing all of this step by step along with me. You can pause and play and go at your own pace, but we'll be making the exact same image together so you can get familiar with the tools, and then you'll be able to begin your own project. Okay, so the first thing you're going to have to do is go to the Google Classroom folder where you found this video, and you will download these images that I have for you. And we'll be all working from the same images to create this Photoshop photo merge together. So click on each image, and then you should be able to open them in a new window and download them there. Okay, so there should be 4 images total. Open each one in a new tab, and then you can download it using this little arrow button. All right, so now I've got all 4 images downloaded. I'm going to go ahead and go to Photoshop. We're going to do all this together, right? But when you actually do your project with your unique photo merge, you'll have to consider which image is your main image when you start designing your canvas, right? So if you have a background that you know you're going to work on top of, or maybe an image that's kind of your central image, you probably want to start opening that image because that will be the size that you need for your canvas. If you don't have a specific image that you want to size your canvas to, you can just kind of pick a default size and then fit your images to that. The order you go in, it doesn't really matter. For this one, I think it's probably best to start with a blank canvas. So we're going to create a new canvas here. And remember, there are these presets that you could choose from. Let's go ahead and pick the default Photoshop size and create. So now I've got a blank canvas to work on top of. Remember, you want to keep your layers organized. Photoshop is a little bit different than Illustrator with the way that their layers work, so you have to keep track of that, make yourself folders, things like that, all very important. So we're going to start by placing our first image, which is going to be the apple. The way you do this is you have to click File, Place, Embedded. That's how you'll add photos to your layers. So find, I think these are under Downloads. Yep, Apple. All right, and that just added my apple as a new layer. I'd say that's a pretty decent size. I'm going to move it over here to the left. When you first place an image, it has these points on it, which you can transform. Now, if I just start going around like this, I might kind of warp my image, and I probably don't want to do that. I will Control Z to undo that. If I hold the Shift button, then when I drag this, it'll keep that ratio, so I don't have to worry about distorting my image in any way. So I recommend holding the Shift button if you need to change sizes, unless for some reason you want to warp your image, then of course you can. So hold Shift. Once you have it the size and the place that you want, you can click Enter, and then those lines will go away, and we can start editing this. There's not much to do right now. It's just the apple, so I'm going to go ahead and add in my next image, but I want to add it into a new layer. Remember, we got to work in separate layers. So I've got a new layer here, and now I'm going to place my other image, and we'll do the crater. So same thing, it's going to show up with these little bars on here, so I can start transforming it. I don't want to mess up that ratio, so I'm going to hold Shift and make it smaller. I want to line it up on top of my apple. Oops. I want to line it up on top of my apple, so it'll actually help me to turn the opacity down while I figure out the best place to put it. I can rotate it. And just so you guys have an idea of where we're going, this is going to be a worm sticking out of an apple picture, in case you haven't guessed that yet. All right, line it up there. That looks like a good place for it, and I'm going to click Enter. Now, if at any point you transform an image and you want to transform it again later, you actually have to click something special to do that. If I just click this image, those little lines don't automatically pop up. So you could go to Edit and then Transform, and that'll bring up those lines again, or shortcut Control T. That's going to be another shortcut thing that I add to your guys' sheet that I'm building. So that's a really, really good one to know, especially with Photoshop when you're going to need to be scaling things and distorting things all the time. So Control T will bring back up those bars that will allow you to then edit your image again. Say, this is exactly where I want it to go on my apple. I can go ahead and bring that opacity back up so I can see it better. Now what I'm going to do is create a layer mask, and that will allow me to get rid of parts of this image that I don't want. Few things. We've done this, if you had me for intro, we've done this on Pixlr. You might have used it on your name tag a little bit, just kind of using that tool to draw away that background. You could also kind of shortcut things. So if you know for a fact that I only really need this section of the picture, you could select that section of the picture and create a new layer from that. So we're going to go ahead and do that. There's a few different tools we can use, but let's start with the lasso tool. So it'll be over here on the side. If it's not here, remember you can always right click. One of those might show up, but you got to pick the lasso tool. So find that area here. If you can't find it, right click areas until it shows up. And this is basically just kind of a drawing tool. You're going to circle the thing that you want, so it's good for unique shapes that aren't perfect squares and aren't perfect circles, stuff like that. I can use my pen to make this easier on myself. And I'm going to draw around this crater. I want to keep some of that area all the way around it. I don't want to draw it all directly to the center here because that will help me blend it into my image and make it look more realistic. So once I have this selected, now I'm going to right click and I'm going to click layer via copy. So that will take everything that has just been selected, copy it, and put it into a new layer. Now I don't need this first layer anymore, so I can go ahead and get rid of that. So now I just have that selection that I made, which was a copy. I'm going to go ahead and create a mask. That is this button down here with the little circle in it. And this will allow me to start getting rid of the background. So what this actually does is you're going to use a brush tool, and you're going to use the colors white and black. I'm going to bring up my color panel here so you can see what I mean. You're not actually drawing white or black. What white and black stands for is foreground and background. So you're either adding image or you're taking image away. Black means you're taking image away. White means you're adding image back. You can control the opacity and the brush size just like we've done before. Bracket tools for that brush size. Opacity is up here. So if you only want to get rid of part of the image and kind of make it a little transparent, you can do that. If you want to get rid of the whole thing, you have that 100%. You can also change your brush style. So if you want like a really, really hard line, you can make that hardness 100%, and that will do like a cut. Or you can make that hardness less and give yourself kind of a softer edge to that. Up to you. Quick way to switch between foreground and background is to press the letter X, and you'll definitely want to use that shortcut as you're doing things. So X, see those colors flip? That way, if I want to add back what I just got rid of, I can flip it to white and paint that back in. Okay, so tool, make sure I'm on black, and I'm going to go ahead and get rid of these edges. I'm going to erase enough so that all of those hard lines are gone. And then I'm going to change my opacity down, and that will help me kind of blend in the crater with a little bit of transparency. And if at any point I go too far, I can always add it back in by switching to white. Okay, so my crater looks pretty well blended into the apple, except the colors and stuff don't match. So when you do your projects, I want you guys to try your best to match colors, to match shadows, to make things look realistic, right? Like it's all one photo together. So you'll have to kind of add adjustment layers to each image. An adjustment layer is just the same way as any other layer has worked before, except you apply it to just specific parts or specific images, and you can change things like brightness, saturation, and all of that. And remember, you want to change it on individual layers so you have everything separated. So the way adjustment layers work is they will apply to every layer below them unless you link them to a specific layer. So you'll have to be smart about this. Obviously, I don't want to change any colors with my apple, at least not right now I don't. So I just want to change colors with my crater. I'm going to have this layer on here, and I'm going to add an adjustment layer. What I choose to adjust is up to me. Right now, I think that this needs to be more of a red tint, so I'm going to click Color Balance. See that added an adjustment layer up here, and now I can kind of add more reds into the image to make it blend a little bit better. Right now, it's applying to everything. I don't want that to be the case. So the fix for that is to hold the Alt button, mouse over this little line in between your two layers, and now you see that arrow that popped up. I'm going to click that. Now you see the arrow popping up here. So what that means is that adjustment layer is only going to apply to the layer directly below it instead of all of the layers below it. So you can use that to your advantage. If you want to add an adjustment to multiple layers, you can just make sure it's only above those layers, or if it's just one layer, you link it using the Alt button. So now I'm just linking it to my crater. I'm going to add some more reds, play around, see what colors work, what makes it feel like it's merging more into the apple. That definitely feels a lot better to me. So done with that. I'm going to add another adjustment layer too, because I think it could be a little bit darker. So I'm going to go here, brightness. This one does not have that little arrow underneath it, so I want to make sure it's got that arrow. So it's only applying to the one directly below it, and I'm going to make it just a little darker. That feels better. Okay, so now we have an apple with a hole in it. Go ahead and add our next layer, which is going to be the worm sticking out of the crater. Move it around. Remember to hold that shift button. And that looks good. Okay, so I like where it is. I'm going to add a layer mask. I'm going to zoom in here, remember, Z button. And I want to go down here and I want to get rid of anything that's supposed to be behind that crater so it just looks like he's popping up out of it. On my layer mask, click B to quickly switch to the brush tool. Make sure my opacity is back up. It was previously down. And then I have black selected, which means I'm getting rid of my image. And I'm just going to get rid of everything that's supposed to be behind the hole there. So now it just looks like he's popping out of there. Okay, I think he could definitely use some adjustments as well. I'd like him to have more shadow on him. He's a cartoon, obviously, but I want him to fit better with the apple. So I'm going to add an adjustment layer and create some brightness to bring down that shadow a little bit. So adjustment layer, brightness. I'm going to link it to just directly below so it does not apply to anything else. And I'm going to go ahead and do the shadow color that I want here. So I want that shadow to be nice and dark. I don't want it everywhere, but what I'm going to do is create a layer mask on the adjustment layer. So bring that brightness all the way down, have that brightness layer selected, create a layer mask. Has to be the one in the middle. Layer mask selected here, brush tool, and I'm going to get rid of that shadow where I don't want it to be. So I'd like that shadow to just be kind of down here. So I'm going to get rid of it up here. And then I'd like some of this to be shaded, but not as much. So I'm going to turn the opacity down and just get rid of it a little bit. So that gives my guy a little bit more dimension, a little bit more shading. It's kind of more interesting. So you can use that with anything. You can maybe do an adjustment layer that turns everything black and white, and then you could add that layer mask and get rid of like one little spot that you want to have color. It works with any kind of adjustments, colors, shadows. It's a good way to kind of match your images together. So if you have an image that is super contrasting and has lots of really dark shadows, and you have an image that doesn't have a lot of dark shadows, you can do an adjustment layer on the non-shadow image and then create your own shadows by getting rid of areas that you don't think should have shadows. So hopefully that makes sense. Again, you should be following along with me, just doing everything that I do so you can get a feel for these tools. I'm going to add my last layer here now. And it's going to be the guy's face. And we're going to put his face on the apple. So the apple's going to have kind of a little bit more character. Change that opacity so that I can line him up a little bit better here. Okay. There we go. Bring that opacity back up. And then remember, I can just kind of select the portion that I want. So I really just want this guy's face. I could use the lasso tool again. I could use any kind of selection tool. So if you want to just do a rectangle or a circle, anything works. So I'm just going to circle his face because that's all I need. And I'm going to get rid of a lot more anyway. And then layer via copy. And I do not need that background layer anymore, so I can get rid of that. And there we go. So same thing here. Add my layer mask. Brush tool. Make sure black is selected. Check my opacity. I'd like it to be more. And go ahead and get rid of everything I don't need. So for this one, I really just want the eyes, nose, and mouth. I don't really want any other part of his face because I'd like his face to kind of turn in to the apple. You can keep the eyebrows if you want. I think I'll keep them this time, see what I like. Okay, and then obviously I want him to pair better with the apple. So I could fiddle with those adjustments, make it dark, make it red, try and match it, but what it doesn't have is really the texture of the apple, so you're still missing some key elements there. You can use an overlay on the layer to kind of shortcut your way into merging images together on top of each other if that's what you want to do. So I make sure my layer is selected here, and then it's actually this little drop-down menu in my layer panel. And there are lots of different kinds of overlays that you can do. So I'm just going to mouse over each one and find one that I think works for this image. So darken, no. Multiply, no. It just kind of has the images interact with each other. I like linear dodge. I like hard light. Okay. So I think I'm going to go with hard light. And it's still a little bit dark, but I can brighten that up. So that's the overlay I'm going to choose. And then I'm going to add that adjustment because I want it to be a little bit brighter. Hold the Alt button, make sure it's applying just to that layer, and bring up that brightness. Okay, so I think I can merge this a little bit better, again, using that layer mask. So I'm going to click back to that and turn that opacity down and let some of that apple show through a little bit more. Okay, and I have that watermark there. I don't really like that, so I'm going to actually use the clone stamp tool, which if you were in my intro class, we might have used this in Pixlr before. It's a very similar process. It's basically like a brush tool, but instead of painting with a color, I'm painting with a part of the image. Now the issue is with layers, remember only stuff on front is going to be showing up, so if I'm trying to add some more apple to my picture here, if I paint it in my apple layer, it's going to be behind the face, but I want it to be in front of the face, but I also want to paint with the apple. So all that just to say, I have to merge my layers into one layer, which will not allow me to edit them separately anymore. So you really want to only do this when you feel you've merged them enough and you're confident and you're ready to go. So I'm going to go ahead and bring my apple layer up here closer to the face. I'm going to select my apple, my face, and also this adjustment layer that's on all of them. And I'm going to click Merge Layers. So now that brings it all into one layer. That way I can edit them together. Again, you can't separate this anymore, so you really have to make sure you are done if you're going to do this. And then I want my crater on top, so let me reorder that. Okay, So everything's back to normal, except now this is all one layer instead of multiple layers. I'm going to click my clone stamp tool. I'm going to choose a part of the image that I want to paint with by holding the Alt button, and you see this little target finder shows up. And now I'm going to paint with that part of the image over here. So that will help me add some of those like apple spots that I want. Again, I can have that opacity down, so just adding a little bit. And I can just keep clicking different parts of the image. So let's say I want some of these apple up here. Let's see, I want some of this texture to continue over here. And that will also help me get rid of that watermark. Turn that opacity up. Okay, so watermark's a little bit more gone. I've got some more apple texture happening in other areas. We're overall good. So I feel like my photos are merged together well. I've added those adjustment layers as needed. A good way to kind of really finish merging your photos together is to add an adjustment layer over all of it to either create a filter or manage your shadows a little bit more. But again, it'll help kind of merge everything together. So I'm going to add one more adjustment layer. Let's do a levels layer. So this is kind of a little strange just to look at it, but it helps you kind of change your blacks and your whites of your image, and this will help kind of pair everything together. So I'm just going to drag these until I feel like I like what it's doing. And okay. So again, I just think it helps pair everything together. I could do as much more as I want to this, but that's basically it. So that is the basic tools for Photoshop. I've said this before, guys. If ever you're just like, oh, I want to do this specific thing, and you're not sure how to do it, please type into Google how to merge this photo Photoshop, right? And there's so many tutorials and stuff on YouTube. That's mostly how I learned how to do it. That's pretty much all how I learned how to do it. And what I'm relaying to you is just the basics of what I have found from the internet. So Google things, talk to me. How do you do this thing? I can help with some tools, but honestly, Google and Adobe walkthroughs are going to be the most easy way to find that kind of information. When you're done, you'll export it again as a PNG or a JPEG, same way that we've done before. Don't export the Apple. Guys, I'm just talking about your actual project. You don't have to turn this demo in anywhere. This is just for you to get familiar with the tools and all that. That file export is right there. So again, just for your final project, you can export it. You don't have to do that for the demo. Now, when you are looking for photos for your Photoshop project, it's really, really important that you get good quality photos so that you can merge them together to your heart's delight. If you find something that's super low quality and you try and expand it and it gets all pixelated, that can be a problem. So when you are searching on Google for images to use for your project, you want to definitely use a search tool, and I'll show you how to do that. So let's say I'm looking up for a sleeping cat. And I have all of these great photos. Some of them are high quality, some of them are low quality. They can be hard to sort through. So an easy way to sort through them is to click this Tools button, go to Size, click Large, and that will only show me nice, high quality photos that I can use. So if I like one, I can pick it, and you can mouse over the image here to see that quality. As long as one of those numbers is in the thousands, that's a pretty good high quality image. If both are in the thousands, that's even better. If they're both lower than that, you probably want to pick a better one depending on how big you want this image to be. Again, you don't want things to be pixelated. So as you are searching for source images to use for your project, definitely take a look at those numbers there and make sure you're getting good, high quality photos. So at this point, you should be good to go ahead and find those photos that you want to use for your project, do your Photoshop kind of planning, get your idea figured out, get those photos together, and then you can begin working on your project.